All right, everybody, welcome back in to Sports and Money. KC, Ben Parker here. It's a privilege to have you on board tonight. We're talking the Kansas City Chiefs, and I told you a few weeks ago when I did, I think the linebacker group that we were going to go through at my leisure during the summer and talk about the different position groups and just kind of get a feel for how we feel about some of these position groups on the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're concentrating on the offensive line. Hope you're doing well. I know a lot of you have watched us for years, so we appreciate that. Some of you may be the first time. Hop in. I'll be working on this. I don't know, probably 20, 30 minutes. We'll be talking about the offensive line. I'll lay out my opinions, and then you hit me up in the comments about how you're feeling about some of these guys. I'm going to go back and forth between two different websites tonight. We're also working with a picture window, so we'll see how everything puts together. But right now, I am screen sharing, and I've got pulled up the ourlads.com. It's a website I think probably all of you are very familiar with, I'm guessing. If not, it's a pretty cool website. They, listen, nobody knows everything, but what they try to do is project who's going to be in the starting lineup for the start of the season. So, and again, that information changes by the day, by the week, and they don't always have the right inside track. So, if you guys see something different here on the screen, by all means, hit us up. If you're like, hey, I see a position battle where it's obvious the other guy's winning and our lads has a different guy, that's fine. Hit us up. Again, this stuff changes and people see it in different ways at different times. So that's just what we're looking at today. But this is what I got pulled up, ourlads.com. I'll hit another website here in just a little bit. So offensive line today, how are we feeling about it? I feel really good about this offensive line. I really do. Now, it's not perfect. I'm going to bring up a couple of significant concerns, but overall, I feel good about the offensive line. Mainly, this is the huge thing, I feel like this offensive line can give Patrick Mahomes time to throw the football, and that's really important. Now, we're going to hit a couple of concerns here in a second. Part of that I feel so good is that Andy Reid and company seem like they have figured out how to scheme so that Patrick Mahomes has time to throw the football as well. So this isn't the best offensive line they've ever had necessarily. I think that was about 4 seasons ago, but I still feel really good about it. Let's start with the bright spots, okay? Creed Humphrey right there at center. Now that Kelsey has retired for the Eagles, most people are saying, and I tend to agree, that this is the best center in the game. Does that mean he'll play best every single year? No, there's a couple other guys who might even have a better season at some point, whether it's last year or 2024, 2026. But generally, year to year, Creed Humphrey looks like he's the best center in football now. So Kansas City's had him for a while. He's been really good for a while. Nothing changes here. This is a great way. And listen, this is one reason why I really think a lot of people are undervaluing centers and guards in the NFL, because Kansas City has built the offensive line from the inside out over the past 3 seasons. And it's really been a strength for them, and it really hasn't cost them tons of money. Is it cheap? No. But it also hasn't cost them tons of money because those center guard positions tend to be a lot cheaper than the tackle spots. So it's been a way for them to save money. And listen, a lot of this modern kind of current premium position stuff that people are putting out there really does start with not team building. It really starts with, hey, we've got a really expensive starting quarterback. We can't afford all these positions. So which positions do we feel like we need to throw money at? Well, guard and center, I guess we're going to lower the money on them. Linebacker, will lower the money on that. Safety, maybe we'll do without a great starting safety. That's really where this comes from in a lot of these teams. Now, Kansas City hasn't quite done it that way. Obviously, they've prioritized the inside of the offensive line, or more probably just had better luck with the inside of the offensive line is really kind of what's happened here. So it is not that they've tried to ignore tackle. But anyway, Creed Humphrey, ink him in at center, hopefully for the next, 6, 8, 10 years, however long he feels like playing. And he does look like the best center in the game. So rock solid right there. Joe Thuney. I love Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney is one of the best guards in football. And you've had him for 2 or 3 seasons now. He's not cheap. He costs some money, and that's okay. You got to pay somebody, and Thuney has been well worth it. Thuney is so good that he not only handles his own business, but you often see him helping out the tackle, sometimes helping out Humphrey, but often you see him helping out the tackle, whoever the left tackle is at the time. He is well worth the money you're paying. Now, listen, people throw that comment around that somebody's worth every cent. Uh, what does that really mean half the time, right? But in this case, Joe Thuney is worth the extra money that you're paying to a guard because not only is he so good that usually he can handle his business, he's also helping the guys on the left and right, usually the guy on left. So love Joe Thuney to death. He has been one of the best guards in football since pretty much his second season in the game. And so absolutely love Joe Thuney. You talk about a guy that answers the bell and is consistent about being available to play. And he's really good. And he helps guys left and right. There's nothing not to like about Joe Thuney. Absolutely, this is one of the guys that you're willing to pay the money to when money's tight. And it is in Kansas City. And it has been for a couple of seasons, and it will be for the next decade as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing quarterback, right? The money's going to be tight. But Joe Thuney is worth the price because you're building up that interior offensive line. And that really gives Patrick Mahomes the time to throw the football. On the flip side, right guard right here, Trey Smith. I think still in rookie contract, if I remember correctly. Anyway, he's been good ever since he came in. We know all about how he came into the league and why he got drafted so low and how Kansas City took a bit of a chance, which really wasn't that big of a chance considering how low he was. But he's been good ever since he got here. And I don't see anything changing, man. He's not dominant and, he's not an all-pro. But you talk about a guy right here that just locks down the right guard spot, handles his business. There are times when he needs help. There are times when he can't quite handle elite guys coming up the middle. But in general, Trey Smith is just a really good, solid starter right there at right guard. And some weeks you often have the advantage there at right guard versus the defensive team that you're lining up against. So, again, this is a guy that's guaranteed to be the starter, guaranteed to be good every week, can handle his business most weeks, doesn't usually need help unless he's playing some elite guy like an Aaron Donald or somebody like that. And then in a lot of weeks gives you an advantage. So this is a great deal right here at right guard. What a core. I don't know of a core better on the interior. I don't think there is one. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, quite a trio. They absolutely lock down the middle, and they're good at running and pass blocking. So there's really nothing they can't do here. And that's a building block, right? That's a base. Chiefs can operate off of that. All the schemes. Listen, Patrick Mahomes' big arm doesn't mean nothing if he doesn't have time to throw. And we saw that 3 seasons ago when the offensive line was really struggling. We saw that he just couldn't get it off in time. Now we can. Again, it's not the best offensive line ever, but this gives them time. And all the schemes in the world don't mean anything unless you can at least block for a certain amount of time, pass blocking, and at least block with a certain amount of effectiveness in the running game. The schemes just don't mean as much, but the schemes work because they have a core right here on the offensive line. So it's fantastic here. Love Thuney, love Creed, love Smith. Creed Humphrey, you could argue who's better between Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney. I would take Joe Thuney, but Creed Humphrey at his position is the best in the game, and Trey Smith doing a really good job there at right guard. So let's talk about the tackles a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to have some questions and concerns here. I'm going to start right here with Jawaan Taylor. You brought him in last year, paid him a boatload of money. I liked it. It didn't pay off last year, all right? Jawaan Taylor struggled. Jawaan Taylor struggled in run blocking. He struggled in pass blocking, just like he struggled with Jacksonville. And whereas I really thought that he would take a big step forward here with Kansas City because he was still pretty young, well, he didn't, unfortunately. So now you've got Jawaan Taylor here at right tackle, and he's kind of showed us the same problems he showed us in Jacksonville. Now he's athletic, he's quick, he doesn't anchor very well. People can still beat him off the edge, even though he is quick. He hasn't yet shown us. So you're really hoping, I'm really hoping that Jawaan Taylor takes a step forward here this year. Maybe he's a little bit more comfortable in the Chiefs scheme, if we're being optimistic, right? I wouldn't necessarily count on that happening. The best I would say for Jawaan Taylor, let's assume we're getting the same guy that we saw last year and his last year in Jacksonville. At least we know what we've got. We've got a guy who's not going to anchor very well. So we're going to have to help him out when it's passing downs. We're going to have to help him out. We're going to have to help him out with the tight end. And the Chiefs do that. Listen, people talk about the Chiefs playing a lot of tight ends. The reason they've done that over the past 2 or 3 seasons isn't because they like big formations and tight ends. That's not it. The reason they're doing that is because they've struggled with tackles. Tackles are really struggling with the edge rushers. So what they're doing a lot of is they're leaving these tight ends in, 2 and 3 guys sometimes. So you just know that you're going to have to help. And still, though, you can work with that, right? Jawaan Taylor, he's got the speed and the athleticism. You can do things with that. But when it's passing downs, 3rd and long, 2nd and long, whatever, when it is a passing down, you put a tight end right there, and you allow that tight end to help Jawaan Taylor keep the edge rusher from getting off the edge. And so now it's just up to Jawaan Taylor to hold off the inside edge. But then, even then, after 2 seconds, Patrick Mahomes has looked downfield, right? Even then, the tight end can then release. He doesn't have to stay there for any longer than a second and a half, 2 seconds. Then he moves on out because that edge rusher has been slowed down. Jawaan Taylor should be able to handle him at that point. Now you have that tight end kind of bleeding out for some underneath route. And listen, maybe you don't convert the 3rd down to a 1st on that play, but at least you're getting something. You're giving yourself a chance. So that's what the Chiefs have been doing for the past 2 or 3 years. And it isn't great, but again, money is tight. And you can't just have top starters everywhere when you're paying Patrick Mahomes, and when you're paying Chris Jones, and when you're paying Joe Thuney, and when you're paying a couple of other guys that you're paying on this team, the money just runs out. So you can't be top everywhere unless you've just got the magic touch of drafting, which the Chiefs do okay at. They're not just killing it; they're doing fine at it. So Jawaan Taylor is expensive at right tackle. Let's hope he takes a step forward this year. But if he doesn't, Kansas City knows how to handle that. They know how to scheme around that. They just know. So they'll be fine. Left tackle. This is where I'm really curious to get you guys' opinion here, because you guys are in Kansas City and you see the news and notes every day. You hear the beat reporters talk about it and write about it, and you hear them talk about it. This position battle, if there is one, between Wanya Morris, last year's draft, I think it was last year's draft pick out of Oklahoma, and then Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU. I'm interested to see if Suamataia can't take this, but at the end of the day, I don't care as long as somebody can do a decent left tackle. Now, do I expect either of these guys to step up and just play a stone cold left tackle this year? I don't. I don't think that's reasonable to expect either one of these guys. They're not 1st-round draft picks, but even 1st-round draft picks struggle at left tackle in their first season. So Wanya Morris, who hasn't had any significant playing time at left tackle for the pro teams, and Kingsley Suamataia, who's had 0 time playing left tackle in the NFL, they're both going to struggle. So you just automatically know, again, for Kansas City, we're going to have to help them out. Hopefully they can hold their own on the running downs, but even if not, we'll scheme around that. We'll run up the middle. We'll run inside. We're pretty good at doing that. We'll play stretch whenever we need to run off the edges if we need to. With passing downs, that's where you absolutely know, whether it's Wanya Morris or Kingsley Suamataia, you absolutely know that you're just going to have to help them out, okay? And there's no doubt about that. So anytime they're up against anybody who's even halfway of a blitzing edge rushing threat, you're going to have to help them out. So that means a tight end over on that side. That's why you're going to see more of the 2 tight end sets until either the left tackle or the right tackle can show that they can hold their own. And when they show it, that's when you'll see fewer 2 tight end sets. That's when you'll see Kansas City start to go spread more. And until then, you're going to see the big sets. I'm convinced of it, at least, mix and match right throughout the game. So I am interested to see, though, what you guys think, if it's Wanya Morris going to get the starting nod there at left tackle, or if it's Kingsley Suamataia. I'm sure right now the job is up for grabs. Our lads has Wanya Morris up front, probably because he's been there a year longer than Kingsley Suamataia, but TBD on that. Now, here's my other big concern, all right? And I understand why it's here. So I like this starting 5, especially the 3 in the middle, right? And the 2 tackles at least give you hope. And I like the fact Kansas City's not ignoring the offensive line, right? They drafted Wanya Morris. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia. They killed it with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith 2 and 3 seasons ago in the draft. They drafted Hunter Norzad. And then they're bringing in, you see all these orange right here. Anywhere you see orange, that's a rookie, okay, for our lads. That's the color code here. But you see here in the depth chart, rookie, 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 and a lot of these are just undrafted rookies. Okay, that's who most of these guys are. You guys know that. You know your team. But a lot of young guys here, a lot of cheap young guys, a lot of unproven young guys. All right, and then you have Mike Caliendo, who hasn't played a lot, and you have Lucas Niang, who shouldn't play a lot under any circumstances. We've seen that. So you don't have a lot of depth here. And it's not because Kansas City has ignored the offensive line. They haven't, right? I mentioned it. They drafted Wanya Morris. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia. These aren't sixth round picks either. These are good, solid, important picks that they're bringing in. They drafted Creed Humphrey. They drafted Trey Smith. They drafted Hunter Norzad. So they're not ignoring it. They're doing their work by drafting guys and continuing to bring them in. And they're not all going to hit. Not worried about that because I like it that you have two young guys here battling for left tackle. I absolutely love it. If even one of those guys hits, that's all you need. And you don't need a superstar over there at left tackle. You just need somebody who can kind of hold their own on most weeks. And then maybe against an elite player on, 3, 4, 5 weeks out of the year, you help them out. But you need somebody to hit here. You need somebody to stick. You need somebody, and that really opens up so much more you can do on offense when at least one of your tackles is hitting. So I love the fact that they've got these two young guys playing here and competing for this job. I absolutely love it. What I don't love, and I understand it, is the lack of depth. This might be, I think it actually is, as I look at it. I think this is the least depth we've had on this offensive line since this era, since this Andy Reid regime started. Now, maybe 8 years ago, you had depth problems too. But since I've been studying the Chiefs for the past 6 or 7 years, this is the least depth I've seen. Usually they go about 7 deep. Some years I've seen them 8 or 9 deep. Some years I've seen them 6, 6.5 deep. I don't see any depth here. Okay. Now listen, draft people can write all they want, bless their hearts, about, hey, this 5th round draft pick was drafted for depth. But that's not depth. Depth is somebody that you feel fairly certain that you can count on for 4 games or 8 games, or God forbid the playoffs, to at least somewhat hold their own. And you don't have anybody like that. There's nobody here like that. You've got 2 guys here at left tackle that you don't know if either guy can start. And you don't know if either guy can be a decent backup for 4 games or 8 games or the playoffs. And you look at all down, up and down here at the second level here with Caliendo, Hunter Norzad, C.J. Hansen, Lucas Niang. There's nobody there that you can count on to play meaningful snaps. Now, the great optimism is that, hey, these young guys are going to develop, and some of them are going to hit, some of them aren't, but we're going to get a couple of guys, and that may very well happen. You may very well end up with 7 guys that you can count on out of this whole team. You may have 5 starters and 2 guys, but at the moment, heading into training camp, it's just not there. And Kansas City knows that. Andy Reid knows that, and Brett Beach knows that, and you know that, and Patrick Mahomes knows that, and they'll always say on the right things. Hey, these guys are working hard. They're learning every day, and they're getting better every day. But just stepping back analytically and looking at how we feel about this offensive line, there isn't any depth. And what that means is when an injury comes, because it will come at some point, and some years more than others, when an injury comes, listen, this is the concern. When the injury comes, if you're already helping out left tackle with the tight end, and you're already helping out right tackle with the tight end, when an injury comes, you're kind of out of options to help. And now the playbook gets even more restricted, or you're just not going to help somebody, and Patrick Mahomes is going to have less time to throw, and now you've got to tell him to get rid of the ball quicker. That's a worst case scenario. I don't mean to be all doomsday, gloom and doom on here, but this is just the reality. There isn't any depth on this offensive line. So why is that? Does Brett just not know what he's doing? Did Andy forget about the offensive line? No. This is a direct result of having an expensive quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is making a lot of money, and he should be. There's no reason for him not to be, and there's no reason to try to nickel and dime him. Whatever contract he wants within the bounds of reason, you give him, and that's it. That's it. And you're still the envy of everybody in the NFL, right? Even though you're paying a lot for it, you are the envy of everybody in the NFL because you've got the best quarterback in the NFL. So that's not a problem. It's just, hey, this is reality. And I heard an NFL general manager say a couple of years ago that, well, we can't really tell which players had to depart because we've got this expensive player on the roster. Yeah, you can. It's not hard. You can tell. We already talked about this at linebacker. Even though I like the top three guys at linebacker, there's no depth after that. So you're not injury proof. Excuse me, same thing here with offensive line. I think it's a good starting five, especially the middle three. And that left tackle battle gives you some hope. Or maybe, maybe they shuffle things around a little bit. But listen, there's no depth, so you're not injury proof. So when the injuries hit, wherever they hit here at the offensive line, now you got a problem. And what you don't want to have is there's this thing called scale tipping. Right now, you've got three very good offensive linemen and one in Jawaan Taylor that you're hoping can kind of sort of hold his own on some downs, but you're going to have to help him out on the passing downs. And then you've got the left tackles that are fighting back and forth, but you're hoping somebody steps up, but you don't know they will. You're 3-2 good offensive linemen to help offensive linemen. If there's an injury to anybody in the core, now all of a sudden you have two good offensive linemen and three that need help, and there's just not enough scheme or help to go around for that. So that's when you would really be in trouble. But again, all NFL teams have this, okay? Whether it's the offensive line or the defensive line, a linebacker, wide receivers, there's no NFL team that doesn't have this. So again, I'm not picking on Kansas City. I'm not picking on Kansas City fans here. Just, hey, where are our weaknesses at? Well, this is it. We're hoping somebody develops. What I really hope will happen, and I'm going to turn over here to a different website here because that's really all we need to see for Kansas City. I really hope that at some point Brett and Andy decide to bring in one or two veterans on the offensive line. Okay, you might say, well, why haven't they done that already? Well, there's probably a bit of a waiting game. If you call one of these guys right now, we're going to look at a few names here in just a second. If you call one of these guys right now, their agent, the price is going to be higher because half of these guys sitting in free agency right now don't even want to be in training camp anyway. They're like, the heck with it. We've been through too many. I'm banged up. I'm coming off an injury. I'm trying to rehab. I don't need to be in training camp. All right. So a lot of them don't even care about, but still, the price tag is higher right now because they know they can wait until some team collects an injury in training camp or during the first week, and they'll make their money. So there's no need for a lot of these guys to be in any big hurry for signing a contract. But as you start to get closer to the start of the season, then a lot of these guys' prices go down depending on what teams have injury needs at these positions. So bit of a waiting game that goes on here between the free agents themselves and between the teams who may or may not need somebody. Also a bit of a waiting game here for Brett and Andy as they're evaluating the team and they go through training camp. They're hoping that they don't even need to sign anybody. What if Kingsley Suamataia does show up? And what if Jawaan Taylor does show up? And what if, two of the other young guys do show up? What if they all hit? Then you don't need anybody. You've got your depth, They know that they're going to have to sign somebody, I think, and at some point. But even if they don't, the free agency room here is thin. So they're going to have to scheme up something. What you just don't want to have is a situation, say, come October or Thanksgiving, where you've got an injury and all the best guys are gone here off the free agent market. So again, bit of a waiting game here. We'll see what they do. I'm looking up, this is a website called Sharp Football Analysis. There are many websites that tell free agents available and free agents signed, but Sharp does a good job here looking at best remaining offensive tackle free agents 2024. This list changes all the time, by the way. So if you watch this video 2 weeks from now, the list will have changed. There's no question about it. But again, this is what's available right now. The top three guys here. So that's Donovan Smith and David Bakhtiari and DJ Humphries. Those are all fairly big names and desirable players, but they're all old. And two of them, at least, Bakhtiari and Humphries, are coming off pretty big injuries. So to my way of thinking, DJ Humphries would be the guy I would want, but he's coming off some kind of an ACL injury. I think he just got off crutches a couple of weeks ago, something like that. So he's working his way back. How in shape is he? Even when he's in shape, will he be rusty? Will he still have recovery time? Will he even be anything like what he normally is? in 2024 at any time? It's a big question. Same thing with Bakhtiari. I know teams are talking to Bakhtiari. I figured Bakhtiari, I heard him on the interview the other day that he wants to play. But again, how good can he actually be at this point in his career with all the surgeries and with all the injuries? That's a really good question. And Donovan Smith, of course, didn't look bad last year, but didn't look good. He wasn't anywhere near the same as he has been before. So, again, do you really want to pay him? Those are questions. Those are questions that are going to wait till after training camp. Okay, so Jason Peters, I have a hard time seeing anybody sign him. Charles Leno isn't a bad go. All right, again, but you can see it's a thin list here. Cameron Irvin, I don't want. Billy Turner, I don't want. Riley Reef, I don't think I want at this point in his career. And now it leaves him with kind of Dwayne Brown, who's long in the 2-8, and Connor McDermott. So what you've got here with the remaining offensive tackle guys, you've got a lot of guys here who are either really old or they're coming fresh off an injury or both. And so it's not a very desirable list, even though some of the names can be very eye-catching here. So again, when you look through this, I would be very interested in signing one of these guys after training camp if I need him, if the price is right. If the price isn't right, forget about it. I'll just go with what I got. I'll take my chances because, again, it's not just Kansas City who has problems on the roster. It's every team in the NFL, every single one. So there are tackles here I would be interested in. I've got to see if they're ready to play. And after training camp, I've got to see if I still need one just for depth. I would love to sign one of these guys just for depth if they're cheap. Again, right now, the price is going to be too high, but the price is starting to fall closer we get to the start of the season. And if not, a lot of teams need these guys. One other group I'm going to look at here is best remaining offensive guard free agents. This is a group that is a lot less impressive, okay? There just aren't very many impressive names on this list. But one guy I did see that I would be interested in is Greg Van Roten. And again, he had a pretty good year last year for the Raiders. I thought he played really well, actually. Matter of fact, I thought he had one of his best years ever, but the Raiders moved on from him. Now, GVR is not going to physically dominate. He's just not. But you talk about a guy who's fairly balanced. And again, why hasn't Kansas City already signed him? Well, listen, they've got a great core on that offensive line. So, they're probably not feeling the pressure to sign him right now. And I'm sure if anybody called him right now, I'm sure the price would still be pretty high. Anybody that doesn't get signed during the first 2 or 3 weeks of free agency, they kind of wait till after the draft and see if somebody needs them. Anybody that doesn't get signed after the draft, after that kind of 3, 4, 5 days right after the draft, they tend to wait until after training camp to see if they can get a good contract somewhere. A lot of these guys can. It just depends on who needs what around the NFL, who's injured, who has somebody that's not developing. So I'm sure GVR isn't cheap right now, but GVR is somebody I would definitely be interested in. Would love to see him on the roster. Again, they don't need him to start, but for depth, it would be great. But anyway, it's a thin list here. You're looking at Matt Filer, might be a decent guy to bring in. It's a very thin list here, okay? So what you're really hoping for, if you're Kansas City, is at least one of my players starts to take a step forward, whether that's Jawan Taylor or whether that's the 2 young guys, Sua Matea and the other guy over at tackle, or whether it's somebody in the background that we haven't even really focused on much yet, somebody develops. That really is the key. So again, how do we feel about offensive line? I feel good. Starting the year, they should be off to a great start. I expect this offensive line to be off to a really good start. A lot of energy in the building. Patrick Mahomes has people to throw to. Some of them he's accustomed to, and some of them he's not. So I expect them to get off to a good start. The only question is the injuries, and then what can they do at tackle? Because again, Kansas City has learned how to kind of keep Patrick Mahomes safe and keep him from getting hurt. And Patrick Mahomes has learned how to play the short game, so they'll be fine. But the more those tackles develop, the more of a spread offense you can do, and the more of Mahomes' deep field passing you can do. And then again, here with the depth, if injuries start to occur in October, November, listen, that year they lost the Super Bowl to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I still think they had a very good shot at beating the Buccaneers that year if it weren't for the injuries that started on the offensive line way back in late September, early October of that year, and then got them again just a week or two before the Super Bowl. So anyway, I feel good about the offensive line. Not great, really good about it though. Y'all should be very good here. And hopefully somebody steps forward somewhere, either to help out the depth or to help out the entire offense altogether. So, all right, that's it. I really appreciate everybody listening. We'll probably do another one of these before the night is out. And thank you all. Have a great one. I'm looking for the ability to stop the recording here, and got a little bit of new tech going on here. But thank you for listening. This is Sports and Money KC. Have a great one. Goodbye.